I'm the one calling out the 2018-2022 administration. I'm saying there's corruption.
Sure.
And I'm saying it's not just the county. I'm calling on SRA, TDM, which is the state, basically the Justice Department, because the DA, I filed on the complaints on the DA, showed him the whole deal. I showed all this information to all the legal authorities available.
Okay.
Hard copy proof.
Right.
Here you go.
What was the response?
They pushed the book back to me and said, I need to talk to my superiors. Local, state, and federal.
Okay.
So who do you turn to for accountability?
It's a great question.
So I keep pressing. I want records.
You are listening to the East Texas Banner right here at easttexasbanner.com. We've got the privilege of sitting down with David Kelley today. Now, David Kelley is in Newton County, and you have recently filed a lawsuit against the county. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Kind of tell your story, man, because you know, I know it's hit social media. I know some of the documentation's hit social media, but how did we get here?
How do we get here? So I started going to commissioners' court meetings in 2021.
Okay.
And every time the math didn't add up. And
Okay.
I'd ask questions and nothing would really get answered.
All right.
I'd ask for records and nothing would ever really get produced.
You said you started when?
2021, the end of 2021. We moved
Okay.
here in 1st of August and I started about October.
Okay. Now, where'd you guys move from?
Idaho.
Moved from Idaho. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're saying the math didn't add up. What does that mean?
So the budget for the county was never adding up.
Okay.
And as I was going through the financial records that are posted, that are public for view,
Right.
there was a hole. And I couldn't figure out where the hole was or how it developed. I just knew there was a hole.
Okay.
By the time the 2022 elections came around, or 2022, for the end of the last administration's term,
Right.
I had stated that there's over a $2 million hole. Lo and behold, the 2022 budget turned out to be $2.2 million short.
Okay.
They tried to balance the budget, say it was a zero budget, but they didn't. They cut services. They used CD money. They used everything of the county to cover and I'll call it malfeasance.
Okay.
And there's never any records of how that money was spent. They just say, oh, it went for this or it went for that.
Right.
And in commissioner's court, if you listen to them, they just read off a bunch of numbers, but there's no documentation presented to the public to say, here's where it actually is. And that's what I'm asking for, the bank records. I want to see the bank records.
Okay. So, how many years are you requesting right now?
I requested 2018 to 2022. I've received 2018 and 2019.
Okay.
Shortly after I put in my last request, which was November 28th of last year, February 24th is when, I want to say the 24th, Commissioner's Court implemented a cost for producing records.
Okay.
Now, Yes, I see both sides because I originally asked, I wanted all the grant documents, I wanted everything.
Yeah.
And yes, that was probably it was an unreasonable request.
Okay.
So I narrowed it down to the bank registers. I want to see the checks. I don't care about the county employees. We know what they're getting. I want to see outside services, wires, transfers, all of that. And they did their 8 hours or 16 hours, whatever the minimum was, and then said this is what it's going to cost to finish it. I'm stubborn. I believe that we the people are still the boss of our elected officials.
Okay.
And those records were not produced since 2021, since I've been asking on the record, on video, in court.
Okay.
And I'll stand and die on a principle. And this is one.
Okay. So you made your first request in 21. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you was that what you would call the unreasonable request?
No, that unreasonable request was my my November request. I was requesting everything.
And that's 23?
From
November 23 when you requested
yeah, that November 23, 28th, whatever
Okay.
date that was. I was fed up with it. I wanted all the information the county did from the past administration.
Okay.
And I narrowed that down from the request of the county to just the bank records.
Okay. So obviously it takes time, right?
Sure.
And obviously when you started this endeavor, it didn't cost you out of pocket.
No.
Matter of fact, you probably single-handedly created this charge for folks moving forward. Understandably so. You know, I mean, there is a nuts and bolts element
Sure.
to giving you a full inventory of everything under the sun. So when you look at, now they have given you information, they haven't withheld everything. They've given you how many?
18 and 19.
18 and 19. What are things looking at that, just with what you've been able to review so far? What's it looking like?
All right, let me give you an example. The county has 10 credit cards.
Okay.
For officials.
Okay.
I'm just going to single out one credit card.
Okay.
$250 a day from Amazon. $250, $300 a day from Walmart. Electric bill.
Okay. Like a personal electric bill?
I can't answer that part because it just says electric. But why would a elected official be paying an electric bill when the treasurer takes care of all the bills?
Okay.
So I know in that one credit card, it's about $2,500 a month. And I know that it was flagged.
Okay.
And never addressed it. From what it looks like, the treasurer flagged it.
The treasurer. Okay.
But it was never reconciled. It was just paid, from what it looks like from my part.
Okay. So is that kind of heading you down a path in your mind as to some of the, maybe what was the word you used, malfeasance? How do you define that actually?
There's a fiduciary responsibility from elected officials.
Okay.
I'm an old GI. I swore an oath to protect we the people.
Okay.
I don't really have much of a problem until those that are elected to take care of we the people abuse that privilege and take from we the people.
Okay.
I have a pretty good idea, and this is my speculation because I don't have all the records. I have a pretty good idea of how the money leaked, and there's more holes in the boat than you could imagine. But if you go back to Okay, so the best way to explain this, I got to backtrack here a little bit.
Okay.
So the county gets tax money, and 15% goes and gets split between all the commissioners.
Correct.
All right, that money can't be touched.
Right.
The commissioners also have commissioner special for their odds and ends, what they need, and that's been funded accordingly, from my understanding, from general fund.
Okay.
Now, what I do know is that approximately $300,000 a year from the old prison was being divided up and put in commissioner special. That's $75,000 each.
Okay.
Nobody knows what that $75,000 is spent on.
Okay.
Could be legitimate, could be illegitimate, but $300,000 a year doesn't take long to.
Now, how did they come up with the $300,000? How did that money?
I haven't, because I don't have records.
Okay.
I don't see how all that transpires. But if the prison's closed, why are they still getting $300,000
a year?
Now they're not getting it now.
When did that stop?
Again, I don't have the records, I don't know, but I believe it stopped when the new administration took over.
Okay.
Because there's just no money, so how you shifting money without
Sure.
having it?
Good point.
The grants, I know for a fact they were robbing Peter to pay Paul, using new grants to pay off the bills from the old ones. What bothers me is we've had to pay back $3 to $5 million in grants.
Right.
And the reason we had to do that is because TDM is cleaning up their books.
Right.
I would have never paid it back personally and said, you know what, you're on the hook with it just like we are.
Yeah.
But they cleaned out, we allowed them to clean up their books, so SRA didn't do their part. Well, how much more does SRA handle that we don't know about?
Right.
The judge has the authority to assign $50,000 to whatever services are needed.
Right.
And how many outside services does that happen to?
Okay.
Now, I know in this administration, Judge Ronnie Cochran, anything over $5,000, he goes to the court and says, look, this is what the deal is. The last administration, there was no transparency whatsoever. And
Okay.
that's my issue. Transparency brings accountability.
Okay. How long ago did the prison close down?
It closed before I got here, so I got here in 21.
Okay.
So I don't know the full
I think
story.
it closed a good while ago.
Yeah,
And
that's
so-
my understanding.
So if this current theory of the commissioners receiving $300,000, $75,000 each, that came off of the prison, obviously through some sort of payback to the county or some type of
Right.
thing. It's kind of like the revenue that would be made off the jail
Right.
and that type of thing. There's probably some sort of deal that's worked out in that thing, and I'm not sure what that is, but that's the only thing that would make sense. So if the county is receiving basically $300,000, it's going into a special fund for the commissioners, then, and say even that was 10 years ago when it closed down, because I think it probably was at least 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There's your money.
So-
There's your how we got broke. Figure 300,000 on
That's
$3 million.
one leak.
That's $3 million,
Yeah, that's one leak.
but that's $3 million.
So what concerns me,
Now, how long have you known that information?
I've had the theory for a while.
But how long have you known it to be true from documentation?
I don't have documentation on the prison.
Okay.
I know that the funding from financial documents shows that transfer.
Even in 2019 and 18.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So what concerns me the most is that from 2018 to 2022, and I posted up, everything I do, I post up on social media, more than $40 million was run through the county.
In those 4 years?
In those 4 years. That's not counting all the grant money, that's just counting the grant money we had to pay back.
Okay.
All right, so $40 million over 4 years, and I can break it down if you want.
Absolutely.
You figure 4 years of $7 million in taxes. That's $28 million.
Okay.
You had a $2.5 million CD in 2018.
Okay.
It was in the bank. That's gone. So that's over 30. Right? You went $2.2 million in debt.
Okay.
And then used the $2.6 million in FEMA cash to cover the debt.
Okay.
Where'd that $2.2 million go?
Gotcha.
A lot of it, I think, had to do with robbing Peter to pay Paul with the grants, fast and loose. The other area of concern is there's a lot of property traded that were just generalized in Commissioner's Court to SRA.
Okay.
This is county property, but it's more conducive for SRA to handle it and swaps or give or whatever, but that we have no idea. And I know there's a ton of property that was given to the SRA.
Okay.
Don't have the paperwork. Well, let me backtrack. I have paperwork. I haven't gone through him individually, so I don't know what the importance of those properties are. I'm not a property expert, so
yeah,
I'm in the dark with that. There's a lot of horse trading. There's a lot of non-disclosure things going on, and the elected officials of that time frame abuse their position. I can give you another example. Precinct 3 was in charge of solid waste.
Who was the...
Gary Tick Bombi.
Okay.
Alright? So, they needed $300,000 or $400,000. There's $400,000 to do the solid waste.
Okay.
Once it was taken away from him, it's a little over 200 now. 225, something like that. When they took solid waste away from them, found out there was a diesel fuel issue. Precinct 3 cut solid waste $30,000 to take care of the diesel fuel that they were taking from solid waste budget.
Really?
Nobody heard about that, did they?
No.
I posted it up on there with pictures. So there's just, everybody knows there's underhanded dealings. And I'm going to come out and say it's shady, it's corruption, they're crooks. And I hope they sue me, because then I get bank accounts.
Okay.
I get full disclosure if they sue me. Well, I don't want to sue anybody. I don't want to have to sue the county. Fair's fair, right's right.
Right.
You hold yourself accountable. I try to hold myself accountable. You hold your children accountable.
Right.
Why don't we hold our elected officials accountable that represent us?
I think there's a theory out here that they're smarter than everybody else.
Well, I can add.
Sure, numbers don't lie.
And numbers don't lie if they're done properly.
Sure.
And I'll give you another example of fiduciary responsibility. And and everybody knows I have an issue with the DA.
Okay.
Courtney Pontier.
Okay.
She self-dealed a contract for her husband, and 1 year alone, he got paid almost $300,000 out of the county.
Really?
It's posted online. I even got a video of her admitting she did the contract, But the contract was between the judge and her assistant DA.
Okay.
So why would the assistant DA say, oh, this is a bad deal, when it's his boss that created it to the judge? And of course, the judge signed off on it. Commissioner's Court, I was like, where's the contract? Nobody to provide the contract. I got the contract. $168,000 a year plus overtime.
Okay.
Now, was it worth it? No, I don't know. But I find it amazing that when he resigned and the new administration come over, suddenly each office had issues that only he could fix.
Okay. So you think it's kind of a rigged situation on the
Yes.
tech support side?
Without a doubt. It's rigged through. Yes, it's rigged.
Okay. All right. Well, what brought you to the point of saying, okay, I'm suing the county?
Maybe my last chance to fight for we the people.
Okay. Fair enough. What do you think, or what do you hope comes out of this lawsuit?
The records, obviously.
Okay.
But hopefully, and when I get them, I'll post them up online like I do. But hopefully, somebody follows through if I cannot and exposes the truth. That's it, the truth. Because once the truth is out, accountability comes with it.
What do you say to people who deem you and what you do as conspiratorial, conspiracy theory, foil hat, and et cetera, et cetera?
Produce the records and prove me wrong. I'll be the first one to admit that I'm wrong. I have no issues with that. And you could even change my mind on the subject if it's a, foundational base discussion.
Sure.
But if you're going to say, oh, it's all good and well, and we're suffering financially because the math doesn't add up, but
yeah,
I want the proof.
Makes sense.
By law, which I'm required to ask for.
How do you think we got here? Do you think it was corruption at the core? Do you think it was maybe small town ignorance? What do you?
It wasn't ignorance.
Say it again.
It wasn't ignorance.
Okay.
I have the foundational belief that we, the people, as a whole, are good.
Okay.
And we try to do good. I believe that somewhere along the line, the county got in a crunch. And my theory would be that grants and FEMA type money kind of helped solve that problem. And kind of one thing led to another, and it rolled. And by the time it got to 2018, 2022 administration, they pretty much figured out how to milk that state and federal money. That's how I see it. And elected officials, human nature took advantage of what they could. Power corrupts, absolutely. Absolute power corrupts. So when you're in that position of power, sometimes it's my way and this is the way it's going to go.
But like you say, it's almost like in a way this started as a way of maybe just a theory here, but you look down and you start seeing water leaking into the ship, and you're like, I got this bubble gum here, and then you're like, oh man, there's a tube of silicone, and then you look over and there's like some quick leak or some of that, what's that, leak seal stuff? That
Yeah,
black
you're
stuff?
talking about the little Dutch boy, and there's only 10 fingers, and there's... Yeah.
And so you start slapping this stuff on there, and then you realize after a few minute administrations, we've got grant money coming in, we got this money coming in, and that money coming in, and there's way less water in the boat than there was before. So it just kind of evolved into a perfect scenario to potentially be taken advantage of, or maybe...
I think it was taken advantage of little by little
along
the way.
But until we have proof, paperwork, then it's just theory, right?
Well, yeah, it's my theory at the moment.
Yeah.
And I shoulder the burden of that. I have no issue with that.
So how much they asking you to produce financially?
It's about another 40 hours. I was told it would be about $1,326 if I remember off the top of my head, but $1,300. And like I said, it wasn't the money, it's the principle, because I just paid $1,456 to file a lawsuit against them to get the free records. So
that's crazy,
right?
Now who, if I mean, obviously you have counsel in this mix.
My counsel is aware of what I'm doing since for the past couple of years now, but I've done this on my own. I'm trying not to spend money. I'm trying not to cost county money. I'm just trying to get the truth, and the only way to get the truth is with the records.
Right.
I tried to compromise the bank records. We all know wouldn't have been a big deal if they provided them every month, as I asked in Commissioner's Court, and the others produced the records.
Yeah.
Here we are. So even with my last request, if they just took an hour a day, 40 hours would have been 40 days.
Sure.
September 24th, it's been over 300 days. So...
what are we talking about?
Well, exactly.
Okay. Okay. So what would make you change your mind on this deal?
Math.
Okay, fair enough. So nobody could come to you in the dark and be like, David, you're barking up the wrong tree here, sir.
But I've had conversations along those lines.
Yeah. Well, that was one of my top questions that I was trying to figure out, you know, the pressure. Yeah, I've been in a couple of these situations, maybe not exactly like what you're dealing with, but there's a different level of pressure because everybody's trying to poke holes at the argument until the argument is fully laid out on paper. And then you say, okay, now what are we doing? You know?
Right.
And it almost feels like sometimes it can feel like you're a large boulder in the middle of a river.
Yeah. It's a good analogy.
I mean, it's really what it feels like a lot of times. So you would put the biggest crux of this on the last administration?
Absolutely.
Okay. What do you feel like the current administration has done to ebb the tide?
Well, I feel for Judge Ronnie Cochran and Commissioner Leonard Powell coming into this. They floated the boat. Even when they got hit with, you know, a couple million to repay back to TDM, because they were already underwater. Like I said, almost $2 million, and it's not their fault. So I understand both sides. When the tax issue came up with this year's budget, and as you know, I stood up and said 2 years ago, you know, read what I said 2 years ago. It's not their fault. And they're trying and doing a good job.
Whose fault is it?
The administration of 2018 to 2022.
And who did that consist of from the commissioner standpoint?
Judge Kenneth Weeks, Commissioner Danny Benson, Commissioner Philip White, Commissioner Gary Fomby, and Commissioner Gene Thompson, and the DA.
You know, that was one of my questions or thought processes while watching some of these budget workshops. Is, you know, had Commissioner White and Commissioner Benson actually considered that their past actions on the council, and if Fomby would have been there, I'd ask that too, but I didn't even present this. My thought process was, did you consider that the chickens would come home to roost at some point? Because here they are.
I think the way they did things were so successful in the past,
sure,
with no questions asked and just accepted. I think it was just kind of a natural given that we can continue on in business as usual.
What do you think is the major difference between how things used to be and how things are now?
They find out somebody called them on a $2 million hole, and what actually happened at a $2 million hole. Somebody stood up, said it doesn't add up.
Yeah. The part that gets me is that how many people in county government knew what was going on? If your theory holds true, how many people knew and did not speak up? And we're a good, loving Christian community, Bible believing, loving Jesus, eating apple pie and watching football. Not bashing on anybody, just saying. At what point do the real genuine people stand up and say, hey, this is something to consider?
Okay, so all this is a two-edged sword.
Sure.
There's a good side and there's a bad side.
Right. Kind of like everything in this life?
Kind of like everything in this life. So, in the big picture of things, I'm the newcomer. I've only been here since 2021.
Plus you came from the north, so that's...
Yeah. And further west before that. So, and I get it, you know, but at the end of the day, there's 6, 7, 8 generations of families here.
Sure.
So they're not just neighbors, they're brothers and cousins and marriages between families, and it runs deep. Roots run deep, and I get that.
I told somebody the other day, not to cut you off, but I told somebody the other day, around here we don't have actual nepotism, we have church nepotism. If you go to the same church, if you eat at the same dinner on the grounds, we're all brothers and sisters in the Lord, right? You know, it's that type of deal.
Mine stems more practical to Americanism, and that's, we were given the Constitution and the Bill of Rights for a reason.
Sure.
And the reason history repeats itself is because we don't learn from history.
True.
And so, I think what bothers me the most is that we would all die at the door to protect our children.
Absolutely.
But you won't die at the county government doors to prevent them from being poor in the future.
Yeah.
I don't get it. The reason all the way up through government that our representatives feel that they're superior and do what they want is because we, the people as a whole, have not kicked their tails.
Sure.
It seems like the only time the community gets wound up and upset is election time and budget time.
Yeah.
Well, all kinds of money is being spent before budget time. What happened to it? That's all I'm asking. What happened to it?
Yeah. Were you shocked at the amount of people who attended the most recent workshops?
Yes.
I was shocked with how shallow of arguments I heard.
So, to defend we the people here a bit, we the people as a whole go to work every day.
Sure.
They're working hard to put bread on the table for their kids.
Agreed.
They're hoping their children are getting a better education than they got, which in reality they aren't.
Right.
And they're expecting that their elected officials are looking out for their public interest for public services. And that's not always the case. I believe as a whole it is in this administration. I believe we're on the right track.
How can you say that when you have still 3 of the 4 commissioners who got us here? I mean, that's just an honest question.
Well, how do I? I'm thinking faster than I speak, so I don't want to misspeak.
I know a lot of people out in the community that would be their response. Wait a second.
And it's true. 3 of the 5 are still on the board.
With no apology, with no accountability, with no nothing.
True.
Riding off into the sunset, my friend. Like it's no biggie.
True.
How are we in a better place?
I think we're in a better place because they're not spending a $2 million deficit. So that in itself is better than it was at the end of 2022.
Okay.
So when I'm saying we're in a better place, that's where I'm coming from.
At least they're not doing what the others.
At least they're not doing what the others
We're doing.
We're doing.
Gotcha.
In defense of we the people, they're trying to work. They're trying to educate their kids. They're expecting their services to be rendered honestly, and they don't have time to read like I do. I have health issues, so I read, and I ask questions, and obviously I can add. So when things don't add up, I'm like, what's the deal?
Right.
That's how all this started. This is where it's all at, and I can understand the public being 3 steps behind, and I think that's part of the manipulation of the past. Is they've utilized that to their advantage, and everything's good. It's just a blip.
Yeah.
And here we are.
I felt like the workshop before last got a little bit hijacked by one specific department, maybe 2, in defending themselves, and I completely understand that. They want to keep their jobs. I get
Sure.
all that. But it seems like, until, it kind of goes back to the old oil field adage, change the man or change the man. If the man won't change, we change the man.
Correct.
And so consequently, it seems like we're at that point. I think Commissioner Fomby is on his way out, and we have Prentice Hobson coming in. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, this may be completely unofficial, but we might be looking at some other changes as well. And so,
Well, my personal opinion, this is coming directly from David Kelley, not anything else. Ronnie Cochran was the best choice Newton could make as judge in this period. The man is an ambassador to understand both sides of the story and tries to split it down the middle. Now, I lack empathy.
Okay.
So I'm a numbers person, and I would have whacked 20 to 25 jobs right off the top and rebuilt them as necessary if needed. The man's got empathy, and he truly considers both sides of the argument.
Do you believe that the currently adopted budget just got adopted, I think? You know, there was talks of obviously they adopted the de minimis, which is going to bring roughly half a million.
Right.
In it'll bring another half a million in, but you're still going to be sitting in a situation where you're almost $100,000 upside down. Still.
August of next year.
August of next year, and here we go again. And so there was some repurposing of some positions on the JP side of things, on one JP side of things.
Right.
But the thing that caught me off guard was the fact that none of the department heads, zero of the department heads, said, you know what? And this is where we get back to some of that church nepotism. You know, you can't fire Aunt Sally, or you can't fire Sister so-and-so, or Brother so-and-so, because, you know, he's not going to be happy on Sunday. And I ain't saying that's the whole deal. I'm just saying that's a comedic way of saying, hey, you know, people aren't so dollars and cents when it comes to the budget whenever it's people that they quote-unquote care about helping stay funded, and I get that.
It's a personal matter. It becomes a personal matter because that's bread and butter off somebody's table.
But my question is right now the time for empathy, in your opinion, or is right now the time to cinch that belt up, or maybe pull it off and go to working some things over? And I know you're not judged.
That's an unfair question. Yeah, that's an unfair question because I don't have the pressure or the burden of
Sure.
leading the people.
I'm just saying, if we're doing a de minimis, if we've accepted a de minimis, and that's going to bring $500,000 in, and we're still $87,000, $86,000 in the hole, and then here we go again next August, it just seems like there needs to be a little bit more fortitude in some way, shape, or form, you know,
Well,
to try to hem the gaps up without taking shots at, you know, librarians and stuff like that.
like I said at the meeting, and I'm kind of avoiding your question here at the moment because I can't make a fair statement to that end.
Why not? If you're good at math.
I'm good at math, but I'm not good at empathy. So I don't see both sides. Yeah, I mean, I can feel for other people, but that doesn't,
Right.
I'm more calculated with the numbers of this is what it's got to be, and I go with there, when there might be a little more floating room in there than what I would personally make the decision on.
Okay.
Do I think, if I could reframe your question here a little bit, do I think they did the best they could have done? No, I think could have been done a little bit better on both sides. I think they could have probably found some positions that had more meaning than the History Center.
Okay.
But if they were going to raise taxes, they should have raised taxes. That's my personal opinion.
Gotcha.
And I said 2 years ago, you got to do both.
Yeah.
So I'm here today, just kind of, nobody wants to hear, I told you so, but the math was there then, and, you know, 2 years, we're still going through the same pain. Not to say we wouldn't have if you didn't cut, but...
You think we'll be here next year?
Yeah.
Think we'll be here the next 5 years?
Yeah.
Until someone stands up makes the cuts and raises the taxes for real? I mean, because what are we talking about?
That's kind of a simplified way of saying it, but there's, so if I could throw another spoke into the conversation on this. So everybody talks about the old prison shutting down and all that.
Sure.
Judge Ronnie Cochran had a plan to bring a prison here.
Okay.
And I don't want to jump ahead and spill the beans, but it was a three-way partnership basically with 2 other counties.
Right.
So the original 12 to 15 million dollars, which now would be, 18 to, just figure 18 million just because of inflation, split 3 ways, that'd be $6 million, and the jobs would be here in Newton County.
Yeah.
That's a win. That's worth swinging some taxes at.
But I also heard that there were a number of people in this county who were opposed to that.
Of course they are.
But why?
Raising taxes. That's all they hear is raising taxes, and what I don't think the public understands as a whole is it's not Miss Margie Heron's fault.
Right.
She's being dictated by the state.
Sure.
So she values all the properties, on the rolls based on that. Property taxes are based on those values.
Yep.
And they go up every year.
Right.
So at the end of the day, that's what people see is, oh, Newton County's getting my tax dollars and we're still sitting here hurting.
Yeah.
I get it. But you got to take that up with the state officials, not the county. The county's got to work with what they've got. And I'm saying the prior administration abused that. That's what I'm saying. And I want the records to either prove me wrong or I'll prove them right. And then the people again get to decide how they're going to hold them accountable.
So I guess my question then is, in one of my last conversations with Judge Cochran, I asked him point blank if he felt like there was corruption in the prior administration, and he said no.
It's an unfair question to ask him.
How?
In my opinion.
How do you think it's unfair? Whenever there was, maybe not said, but definitely a tone that was set that they were corrupt and that Kenneth Weeks was corrupt and the whole 9 yards. There was definitely a tone that was set.
I set that tone.
Well, maybe so, but what I'm saying is there was definitely a tone
I set that
was set
tone
around that race.
So fair being fair.
Okay.
I set that tone. And that's because the math didn't add up.
Okay.
And the more I asked for information, the more it was
Withheld.
dodged and withheld. Okay. So that tone, especially during the election time, that's on me. Asking Judge Ronnie Cochran, is there absolute corruption and he's not in office, or even now that he's in office, I doubt he's seeing any firsthand, because I'm a firm believer he'd be the first one to say, hold up, this is not working, and it would be addressed accordingly, whether legally, internally, how, whatever measures to make sure that wasn't going on any further. Without a doubt. I'll go on my dying breath on that. He will not allow any corruption on his watch that he knows of. Now, leading up to that, I'm the one calling out the 2018-2022 administration. I'm saying there's corruption.
Sure.
And I'm saying it's not just the county. I'm calling on SRA, TDM, which is the state, basically the Justice Department, because the DA, I filed on the complaints on the DA, showed him the whole deal. Let me backtrack. I showed all this information to all the legal authorities available.
Okay.
Hard copy proof.
Right.
Here you go.
What was the response?
They pushed the book back to me and said, I need to talk to my superiors. Local, state, and federal.
Okay.
So who do you turn to for accountability?
It's a great question.
So I keep pressing. I want records.
Yeah. I guess my thought process is, when you're saying and you're continuing with the narrative that there was corruption out of the past administration, and then you came out, or however it came out, that during that race between Cochran and Weeks, came out that there was this undertone and almost kind of,
That's on me.
there was this tone to where Judge Cochran adopted this idea that we're going to do a forensics audit, et cetera, and then now there's investigations going on that's going to impede this and blah that, and we don't want to. And what it looks like is, where are we at here?
Okay, so.
And I'm not asking you to be the spokesperson for Judge
No,
Cochran.
I'm not
What I'm saying is that there is this tone of corruption, and I asked him in the interview. He said, I don't believe it was corruption. And now I'm asking you, and you believe it's corruption still.
Yes.
Okay.
And not to put words in Judge Ronnie's mouth or any of the commissioners or whatever, but malfeasance is a better word than corruption.
Okay.
David Kelley, straight up corruption.
Okay.
So that tone I own. That's on me. The forensic audit. So I asked for that at the end of 2022 when they adopted the 23 budget.
Right.
And it's about $10,000 a month. I'm just ballparking here. Per month for a forensic audit. 48 months, that's $480,000. The county doesn't have $480,000.
Okay.
If I was judge, I'd raise taxes to pay $480,000.
Okay.
And there's a reason why. Because forensic accounting eliminates all questions. Good, bad, or indifferent. If it's good and everything was done right, all right, now we know.
Right.
David Kelley apologizes. If it's bad, every elected official has a bond. I believe it's up to $1 million. So that court would get held to $5 million from their bonds. SRA would get held to whatever malfeasance they did. TDM would get held, which they cleaned up their books with this $3 to $5 million. So they'd be held. And they couldn't threaten us with no more grant money if we didn't pay, because everybody would be on the same page with the sunlight on it.
Right.
The only way for that to happen truly across the board is a forensic audit.
Yeah.
How do we make that happen? When we're broke.
I think it kind of goes back to our initial point for the entirety of for the beginning of this conversation. You know, the question is, you know, how do we take an individual to do basically 80 hours worth of work, right? And get you your paperwork in a timely fashion without charging you when we're broke. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I see it, and I see the side. I'm taking time away from public tax dollars that could be utilized to current daily activities. My answer to that is we prepaid for it and never received it. So how about giving us what we were supposed to get in the first place? And if that means you got an employee that spends a week producing them, well, get the week over with and let's get on with it.
Yeah.
They don't want the records out. I can tell you that right now. After 3.5 years of asking, they don't want the records out.
Yeah.
On top of that, by putting a pretty good price on production, it chills anybody in the future asking for anything beyond 8 hours worth of work.
Yeah,
because it comes out of pocket.
It definitely changed. It changed a number of things. I mean, specifically for us as well, because we got caught in your trap as well. Specific to them charging for freedom of information requests and that type of thing. And although us being in the news media, they're a little bit more forthright with trying to communicate and say, hey, this is can you narrow down your question here? And to be honest with you, sometimes you can't narrow a freedom of information request down to the verse. You need the chapter and the books. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when you're going to charge, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, well, hell, it might as well. I mean, you're basically in one way saying you can have it if you're willing to cut the check. And to me, I'm always going to be adamantly opposed to that idea. Because if we're so broke that we can't give free records out, that we're bound by law to be able to provide to the public, what are we doing? You know what I mean? I mean, we want to talk about repurposing people in the county and using them in vital areas. Let's do that. I know we can start with freedom of information requests, and that type of thing. Now, that may be a what would you say, a very naive way of looking at it, but
Well,
at the end of the day, freedom of information requests should be made available to the people.
so, Jay, I'm going to give you $100,000, and I need you to take care of a remodel for me.
Sure.
At the end of that remodel, Jay, where's the receipts for that remodel?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? What receipts?
Yeah.
I prepaid. That's what the people did. They prepay. The county does this business, and it reports to we the people.
Right.
There's no reports. That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah. Easy enough. Any last thing you want to say to the public?
Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely.
It's it's humbling that my opinion is warrants enough to be spread to the public.
Okay.
And I appreciate the fact that you keep putting out the quality of information that people need, and they deserve, but they need. I hope I was able to help that along.